So I'm continuing my Resident Evil journey, attempting to play every main game in the series, and I did choose to go the remake route for the first 3 entries, mostly because they were very easy to access, and I'm pretty much just looking for an overall basic fun experience and to understand the storyline and lore to some degree. With the first game, most people seem to agree that the remake was the best option to try, and I loved it. I also very much enjoyed Resident Evil 2, despite opinions being mixed on it as far as a remake goes. I was on the camp that I really thought it was great. But when it comes to the remake of Resident Evil 3, I'm going to address the elephant in the room first, and that's that a lot of people dislike this game, and many people were telling me just not to play it at all, or to only play the original version from the PlayStation 1. And I feel like the majority of the complaints come with the fact that 3, that was originally released back in the late 90s, is an absolute classic of the genre and of the franchise itself, and many people feel that it was misrepresented in the remake, along with cutting out loads of content from story points to location and much more. And to that, I can definitely understand their criticisms, and if I had had the same connection to the original version of 3, I'm sure I would feel the same way. Though I didn't find a version of 3 that I could play so I could understand the differences for myself firsthand, the best I could do was the bare minimum, and I did watch a playthrough of the original version so I can at least see where the hate is coming from, and oddly enough, some of my general criticisms of the game after playing it without knowing what was omitted kind of lines up with what fans of the original were saying in the first place. I saw that they did omit moments like where Jill ends up at the police station, which would have been cool to see. The difference in the clock tower fight was just striking, taking away your ability to make choices, which overall affects different outcomes of the game, was a weird decision not to have here. Had I known any of this before playing it, I would have been just as annoyed. In fact, one of the things that I loved about the first Resident Evil game was having to make hard choices. For example, do you give Barry his gun back? It makes you feel like you're more part of the story rather than just sitting back and watching it play out. I'm not sure the real reasons for omitting all this stuff when they decided to make a remake of the third game, other than maybe trying to make it match the style of Resident Evil 4, which I felt like was a massive game changer for the franchise and one that I have played before, both the original and the remake. So 2 kind of felt like a good blend of the original and jumping towards the style of 4. But this 3 remake is definitely leaning quite far on the side of 4 and focusing more on the action over the survival horror or puzzle-solving mystery aspects of the original. But as I try to do with every review I make on the channel, regardless of the medium, is simply to be true to my own experiences and my own personal opinions on it. So without true comparison to the original, I'm going to speak on my playthrough of the remake and just give my general overall thoughts of the story and the gameplay. And I want to start with the positives because I do have a lot that I liked about it. The first positive here is Jill Valentine. She was my chosen character of my playthrough of the first game, and I know Resident Evil is famous for having a rotating roster of different main characters, but having spent so much time on the first game and playing as her in my experience of it, getting to have her back in the forefront for the third game was a huge plus for me. It was kind of like coming back to an old friend after a while. And I like how she's still dealing with the trauma that she experienced at the mansion event, and she's unraveling all of these conspiracies about the Umbrella Corporation in her apartment. And the game starts with a first-person POV of her having a nightmare where she becomes infected, turning into a zombie. It really shows where she's at that moment in time and how much the events of the first game have affected her. And then she's attacked by the nemesis.
You gotta get out of there right now!
All right, let me grab my...
Yeah, I'll get back to him in a little bit. The other thing I liked about this game is that it actually gave me more of something that I wanted in the second one that I didn't get, and that's way more time navigating the city streets during the zombie outbreak. So the cool thing here is that Resident Evil 2 and 3 both happen during this same outbreak in Raccoon City. I think the technical timeline is that the first half of Resident Evil 3 takes place then after Jill is out of commission for a while, pretty much all of Resident Evil 2 happens, and then when Jill wakes back up, that's the remainder of Resident Evil 3. So basically it's one gigantic event all happening at the same time from multiple different perspectives, and I really enjoy that. But in 2, you barely spend any time on the city streets, just the opening and one small segment in Claire's story, really. But in part 3, pretty much half the game is navigating the crumbling streets of a zombie-ridden city, and as being a huge fan of zombie movies in general, I was absolutely loving this. This is kind of what I wanted. You have typical Resident Evil setups here, like a gate is locked with chains or blocked by fire, so you have to find bolt cutters, or go somewhere else on the map so you can find a hose to come back and put the fire out, so on and so forth. Now, this is technically the 5th game of the series that I've officially played, so now I really get the concept of how these games are played, and figuring this stuff out was pretty easy to accomplish. It still has the same idea with you having an inventory bag, and you have to manage your inventory. You can combine items, inspect items, but you don't have to be as nearly investigative as you have to be in the first game or even in the second game. Actually, here there is a significant lack of puzzles, and as somebody that can be a bit frustrated by puzzles in games to begin with, I didn't miss them too much, but I also at the same time feel like this is a staple of the franchise and found myself a little bummed out that there wasn't more to figure out. Instead, it's mostly just running or fighting. Don't get me wrong, I really like the sequences of running and fighting, but the mystery and discovery aspect of the original game is something that I'm kind of missing out on as these sequels go on. In a way, it kind of fits in story though, because if there's something this game made me feel, it was definitely a sense of urgency. Since you're always running from nemesis or traversing the streets that are overrun with zombies that you have to avoid, or getting poisoned by weird spider creatures, like what the fuck is this and why is it the most disgusting cutscene I've ever seen in my life? But right from the get-go, the only thing I thought playing this game was, I gotta go fast, I gotta go fast, I gotta go really, really fast, which did help with the vibe, but also the entire game, I beat it in about 5 hours, and I'm not somebody who generally beats video games very fast. Look, as much as I love playing them for the intensity and the storylines, I would never call myself a good gamer, okay? Me beating a video game in 5 hours is not a common occurrence in my life. The fact of the matter is, the game is just short. I had a lot of fun with those 5 hours, but I was hoping it would be a little bit more on par with 2 and give me a little bit more bang for my buck, which it really didn't. It was kind of said and done in a flash. I beat it in a weekend. But let me continue my positives for a moment. Like I said, I really enjoy that this coincides with 2 in terms of its story. I laughed when you end up back at the police station because this is before Leon gets there, and because of that, you get to see how the police officer that helps Leon in the beginning of 2 get bit, and here it's because of a zombie version of Brad Vickers, who was the helicopter pilot that picked up Jill and Chris at the end of the first game, and he also helps Jill when this one starts. But in the end, no matter how much he tries, he just ends up another dead, infected human. And I do know that his fate was different in this remake version than it was in the original, but this is where he meets his end here. Also, following in tradition, you do get 2 playable characters, but this time, instead of just choosing who gets the main story like the original, or in 2 where you play through as both Leon and Claire to get the full story, here in 3, it's just one story and it will switch you between characters as necessary. Mostly you do get to play as Jill, but there's another guy named Carlos who is a guy I've never heard anybody talk about ever. All of my friends I know that play Resident Evil, nobody's ever mentioned Carlos, but he is part of Umbrella's biohazard countermeasure service, basically somebody trained to deal with these accidental outbreaks, and he's an okay character, kind of a standard soldier type with a little bit of a jokey personality, but he really wants to do right by Jill, and for that, I respect him. There's a moment where Jill gets infected and you play as Carlos for quite a while searching for an antidote, and you also play as him during the police station segments, which I gotta say was a little bit disappointing, mostly because the whole time I was waiting for motherfucking Mr. X to show up. Maybe that was the point, to get you back into a familiar setting from the last game and give you the anxiety that X might be here. but he never shows up. But like I said, because this takes place before Leon gets here, you get to see a lot of cool stuff, like how the bathroom wall was exploded, and you get to see the Lickers kill the 2 dead police officer corpses that you see in part 2. So there is a good attempt at connection here that I appreciate. I think between the 2 formats, I really do like Resident Evil 2's approach much better, having the Leon and Claire stories be separate but connecting when you have to play through both of them. Having Jill and Carlos switch from time to time, it wasn't bad, but I probably would have got more out of it if I got to see their stories one at a time. The human villain here is also kind of underwhelming, Nikolai. He's part of the same Umbrella mercenary team, but he cares a lot less about saving people and a lot more about getting paid. One effective scene is when he shoots one infected soldier with no remorse, basically saying he was going to turn anyway, so what does he care?
He was infected.
He might have been infected.
Oh, stars, this soft.
He betrays Jill and Carlos several times and is really just here to collect data on the bioweapons and destroy a bunch of evidence. He's all around just a prick. You do get to shoot him in the end, but you never really get to have any kind of fight with him. But the real villain of the game, the one that the original was named after, is of course the Nemesis. So let's talk about him. Because beyond Umbrella creating viral infected bioweapons and tyrants, they are now also implementing parasites into them, which I guess adds to the creature's intelligence, its healing factor, and its problem-solving skills, also its ability to use weapons. Nemesis is a gigantic, hulking beast of a creature that has been assigned with one single mission of killing the members of STARS, aka Jill Valentine is his prime target, basically getting revenge because of the first game. I think its introduction is great. It sets up Nemesis as a major threat for the whole game, but even though Nemesis feels much bigger and stronger than Mr. X, as well as looks like a Cenobite from Hellraiser, it just somehow isn't as scary. My main takeaway from this is that in Resident Evil 2, Mr. X can seemingly come out of nowhere, and he's a near constant threat after a certain point. He's always walking around that goddamn police station somewhere, and if he hears you, well, X is gonna give it to you. Nemesis in the 3 remake feels more specific, like he's there at certain moments to help you progress the story rather than always lurking around every corner. Yes, there are plenty of moments where you need to run and hide from him, and moments where he's pulling out a goddamn rocket launcher or sticking a flamethrower in your face, but it feels more action-packed than it does scary. Maybe it's also the humanish look to Mr. X, like he's almost human, but just a little not. And since Nemesis is so crazy in his design, like I said, looking like a Cenobite from Hellraiser, the fantasy elements kind of takes a little bit of the fear away, and I don't really know why. I still think Nemesis is a really fucking cool villain and character in the game, but it was a much different vibe than Mr. X in Part 2, and I was expecting it to feel very similar. But the Nemesis boss battles, I can't lie, I really enjoyed them. The one on the rooftop with the flamethrower is pretty basic, but I was still shocked to see just how fast he was at that size. After seemingly getting burned to a crisp, Nemesis basically evolves into a bigger, stronger version of itself and then crawls around on all fours, kind of like one of the Lickers, but much more terrifying. I really loved all of this stuff, and despite any gripes that I may have had, this was a lot of fun and a major selling point of the game. I love the boss fights. After playing as Carlos for a while in the hospital, trying to get a vaccine to Jill and also taking on a massive zombie horde that was pretty fun, you do switch back to Jill for the final segment of the game, heading back down into the underground laboratory, facing some parasitic enemies as Nikolai tries to fuck with you, and then having 2 final boss battles with the Nemesis. The first one finds Jill in this big arena-like environment where it really feels like it's no more fucking around, this is kill or be killed. And there's plenty of regular zombies that are also thrown into the mix as a distraction, though if you time it just right, you can have Nemesis take them out for you, which is pretty fun. And in the true final fight, Nemesis evolves once again, transforming into this giant, unholy booger blob of insanity. But this one isn't really a fight, it's more spectacle. It's just, you stagger him for a little bit so you can power up this BFG, yeah, that's what I'm gonna call it, I don't care, and then you blast him with it a couple of times. How Jill can hold this thing, I really don't know. I mean, certainly she is a very strong woman, but dear God, I need to know what her deadlift max is now. After you finally blow the shit out of Nemesis for the final time, there is a final confrontation with Nikolai, but Jill just kind of shoots him.
Carlos!
Jill and Carlos make it out of the city by helicopter, and the pandemic is taken care of Return of the Living Dead style, where the government just decides to blow the whole thing up with a nuke. That is one way to solve the problem. I honestly thought Carlos might die since, like I said, I've never heard anybody talk about him, and I don't think he's in any of the other Resident Evil games. But hey, I guess he's still around if we need him. We don't want to live in a Carlos-less world. Overall, not having the history of playing the original version, I do find this one to be a mixed bag, but overall, I enjoyed playing it. I love getting to play on the city streets during the outbreak. That was my absolute favorite part, and I do really like the boss fights. Jill is arguably my favorite character in the franchise, so having her back was a great deal for me, and the graphics and music of this game are fantastic. I have no problems with the way that it looks or the way that it plays. But I was also underwhelmed. I expected Nemesis to be a lot scarier and a more concurrent threat throughout the entire game, when really he's kind of regulated to particular segments. And even though you do play as two characters, it still felt like half a game. But overall, I did enjoy more than I disliked. For me, this is somewhere around like a high B tier experience. It's my least favorite I've played of the Resident Evil series so far, but it also has plenty of redeeming factors that I do like. As for the next one I'm going to play, I have been debating which route to take because I know there's a lot of different directions you could go in choosing the order. But I think I'm going to go ahead and play Resident Evil 0 next, which is the prequel to the first game. Because with Resident Evil 4 that I have played before, it kind of feels like it starts a new era, and I feel like the mansion event from the first one, as well as the outbreak of 2 and 3, and since 0 ties in heavily with the first game, it sort of feels like the first wave or like the first arc of Resident Evil, if that makes any sense. So I feel like I have to tie up the loose ends before I move forward. But after that, I'll jump into the original version of 4 since it is available on Steam, and I'll take it from there. So yeah, I know that a lot of people warned me about this one and say that they hate it, so we'll see what the comment section has to say. What do you guys think about the Resident Evil 3 remake? Do you love it? Do you hate it? If you are on the side of disliking it, does it have redeeming factors for you? Are there things about the game that you actually do like? And if you really love the game, tell me why. Tell me why it's not as bad as a lot of people say and the reasons why you love it. Let me know all that down in the comments below. Thanks for joining me on this Resident Evil journey, you guys. It's my first time going through the whole series, so I'm just doing what I can and trying to have a fun time. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Give it a like and comment to help it out in the algorithm. If you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have Patreon channel memberships, all the social media links where you can follow me down below. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.